If you haven't met me yet, my name is David Just, and I'm going to talk very quickly about the existing PyXNAT in an introductory manner. Originally, I was going to do an advanced presentation, but I've learned that a lot of people had difficulty just getting PyXNAT up and going, so I decided to rewrite my presentation to just be Introduction to PyXNAT. I have published both this presentation and the advanced one on the wiki page for the conference. So both are available, and you can read through my notes on the advanced one. So a little bit of information about myself. Name's David Just. I got a Bachelor of Computer Science from Winona State. I've been a developer for about 14 years. I work for Mayo Clinic Aging and Dementia. We've got around 30 to 40,000 scans in our XNAT instances right now. And the reason I'm talking to you is because I'm acting as the current maintainer of PyXNAT. It was originally written by a guy named Yannick Schwartz, who finished his postdoc and went on to do bigger and better things. I picked up the ball because I needed to. My agenda is going to be answering what is PyXNAT, how to connect to a server, how to access objects, do some creating objects, reading and writing of their attributes, and then uploading and downloading files. This is basic PyXNAT usage. What is PyXNAT? It's simply a wrapper around XNAT's REST APIs. You can do everything you can do in PyXNAT, you can do using curl. PyXNAT just tries to make it a little easier. It simplifies data interactions with local programmable interface to XNAT data, and it allows you to search, object access, file upload, download. Getting started guide is at Python hosted PyXNAT. So creating a connection to the server. This is it. Import PyXNAT, give it a URI, a username and a password, and you have your connection. If you have a proxy is supposed to be supported, but there's a bug in it right now. I'm working on that. But HTTP and HTTPS both work. How do you get an object in XNAT? Well, there's two ways. So the first method is, you can do select.project and then give it a project ID. Select, from the project you can do subject. From the subject you can do experiment. From experiment you can do scans. Each one of those levels results in a number of REST calls. The other way to do it, if you know where you're going, is to do a select and then give it a path. And those paths are deterministic. They're always in the same form, and those are the XNAT REST APIs. They're documented on the XNAT documentation wiki, and they're fairly easy to generate. And they're also faster than going through the pyxnat.project.experiment.scan. They all so this is kind of a layout of the architecture. So you get project, my project, subjects, my experiment, blah, 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 blah. At each level of this, there's a resource. So you can do my project /resources // files, PDFs, whatever. That'll come up later. So the next is, how do you create an object? You can create an object using the Python, the PyXNAT API objects. So earlier you saw me grab a handle to a subject PyXNAT 2016. So that's a handle to the subject. I take that subject and I just do experiment and then PyXNAT 101. PyXNAT 101 will become that experiment's label. So at this point, right after this line of code, you have a handle to the object, but it has not been created yet. So if I ask PyXNAT, does it exist, I get the answer, false, no. You have to call create to create an experiment. During the create, you can specify the XSI type of the object that you're going to be creating. By default, it's an MR session data in PyXNAT, but you can specify any type of session XSI type you wish. If XSI type is a little bit over your head, unfortunately that's not the discussion here. I talk a little bit about it on the advanced presentation. But XSI type is what XNAT calls each of the data types. They're defined in the XSDs that were talked about in the last talk. So those XSDs become important with PyXNAT. So you call create, and then after create, it's true. And then I show how to create a scan. Fairly simple once you know how to do it. But those are just two empty objects. How do we set attributes on them? Attributes can be set using two methods through PyXNAT. You can either do experiment object.adders.set or object.adders.mset. mset allows you to set multiple properties at once. It's a good thing to do this because XNAT keeps a history of every time you update a property. If you do it in a batch, you'll get one history entry. If you do it set property, set property, set property, it does it one at a time and you get a history for every update. It's a little bit slower. So in this case, at the experiment level, once again, you have to specify that XSI type. This is where PyXNAT is kind of hairy. You have to be able to read XSDs to work with PyXNAT. Or you can read the XML files. If you do a xnat.viewxml, you can build these attribute paths that way also. But in this circumstance, I set the field strength, the coil, and the marker. And then on the scan, I set the image type, the series description, and the quality. Getting the attributes of a scan, the other side of that equation, is just the function get or mget on the adders attribute of an object. It takes the same XSI paths I talked about in the set. In this case, I asked for the ID and the quality, and I got scan1 and good in an array. So, all right, we got attributes, or we have objects, we've set attributes. The meat of XNAT is how do you get files, or how do you save files, how do you upload them? This is how you can upload files to XNAT. I'm showing DICOM right now, but it really doesn't matter what type of file it is. I have a scan. I ask for a resource with the label of DICOM, and with that resource, I call the method putdir, and I just gave it a local path to a folder full of DICOM. PyXNAT handles crawling through that folder, finding all the files. It actually zips them up into a zip file, uploads them to XNAT, and then unzips them there. Once it's done uploading, you can actually ask for a list of the files back by just calling the files function. This does not download them. It just gives you a list of the file names. So, there's the first few files of this upload. And that's what it looks like in XNAT. Here I am doing the same thing with some nifty files, just to show that it can be done with non-DICOM files. Actually, I'm doing this to NIFIT files, apparently. And it ended up in the NIFIT resource. How do you get a file? With PyXNAT, in the previous slide, you'll notice that I grabbed the resource, and then I asked for a file, nifty resource.file, and then I said, give me PyXNAT 2016, the file name, basically. So I still have that file1 resource in the next slide. So I still have a copy of I still have a handle to that resource object. I ask for get copy, and that will download the file from XNAT to the path that you give it. The path that you give it has to be fully qualified to the file name. And during this process, you can rename the file, anything you want. If you want to download a whole resource, at the previous slide I was working with a file handle. But if I were to take that, if I were to take the DICOM resource object that I was working with earlier, I can call get on it and give it a whole path to a directory, and it will download the file it will download the whole resource as a zip file. You can also specify extract true, and PyXNAT will extract the zip file for you. If you don't say extract true, if the resource was in any form of structure, it will keep the structure. So it's worth playing with that a little bit.